Smith is not going to help DK Metcalf. This is a very good 49ers defense. Metcalf not the best track record against San Francisco. I would only consider DK Metcalf as a number 3 receiver in 3 receiver leagues. The start tight end for this week, let's stick with that Rams theme. We'll go back to Tyler Higbee. 11 targets in that game against Buffalo, and this is kind of a hedge against Allen Robinson. You know Cooper Kupp's going to get his, but if Robinson struggles or doesn't get open, then I think this is where you'll see Matthew Stafford going to Tyler Higbee, and I think what we'll get from him is positive production. So I do like the fact that Higbee had so many targets in week 1. I think that's something that you can see moving forward, and I do think he will be a top 12 tight end in this matchup against the Falcons. The sit tight end is basically to sit the entire team. I'm staying away from the Chicago Bears. I think the Packers defense bounces back in a big way. Kmet will get more targets than he had last week because he had none, but he will not get the production that you're looking for. Off to a slow start for Cole Kmet. Hopefully he bounces back as the season moves on.
Big AFC matchup in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, the Ravens hosting Tua and the Dolphins. And Aaron Rodgers looks to continue his dominance over the Bears on Sunday night. He's 22-5 in his regular season career against the Bears, his most wins against any opponent in his career. All right, let's welcome in CBS Sports HQ gambling analyst John Berger, who's hitting at a 61% clip over college football and NFL. Stay hot, kid. Here to give us his best bets in week 2 of the NFL. John, start with your top ATS wager. What's the team and number that stands out to you?
I'm looking at the Colts. I like the ability to against the spread on the Colts game right now. I understand when you look at this team, they had 517 yards of total offense last week. This team has proven that they can show up, they can score. They can score in bunches. They're on a run right now, 8-4 against the spread on the road as a favorite. And when you look at Jacksonville, I look at this team and I look at this franchise. Their last 10, they've covered 2 in home openers. When I look at this line, there's not a ton of value out in this slate of games, Hakeem, across the board, especially on that line. But I just look at this situation. And I think the Colts can get this done. I just think they're going to have too much offense, and they've proven they can score points in bunches. I like that bet today.
All right, so you like the Colts getting 3. A lot to choose from here. What's your top money line wager for week 2?
I'm going to go Saints, and a lot of people are scratching their head on this one. 7 of the last 8, Saints have won this matchup. This is a football team, and this is a game. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. It's not going to surprise me if this thing ends up, low 20s, maybe even high teens across both teams. I think for this game to play out the way I think it is, I think the Saints, and they've proven they can do this, they're going to have to go on some long, sustained drives. And they had 2 of them last week, 15-play drives. They're going to have to do this to keep the ball out of Tampa's hands offensively. They want to do that. Their defense has only given up less than 3 yards of rush. So when you wind all that up in this game, given their track record against this team, they know they can play a slow-down offense. They can keep the ball on the ground, keep the ball away from Tampa. Their defense is good against the run. I like our position here, and that's the way I'm going.
Yeah, Tom Brady 0-4 in the regular season against the Saints since becoming a member of the Buccaneers, so you got to like that note as well, John. All right, now let's focus on your top over and under play in week 2. We had a low-scoring week 1. Unders went 11-5. Of the games, though, that went over, Washington, Jacksonville, and Philadelphia, Detroit. This week, the Commanders and Lions play. John, we're looking for an over. Pop the governor here. Is this the game you're targeting? Are you looking elsewhere, or do you like that Commanders-Lions game to go over the total?
I'm going Detroit and Washington, and it's. I just think it's indexed wrong. I don't. This is not going to be one of those great games with Goff mixed it up with Wentz. I don't think it's. I think it has the opportunity to be a sloppy game, but I just think between the two offenses, if you look at what they've done historically. If you look at the matchups, you look at the offensive line, both of them are banged up a little bit, but I can't imagine, Hakeem. I can't imagine. I don't know where this line is sitting right now. I think I picked it up at maybe 47.5, maybe 48, but I just think that's set way too low for both offenses and their ability to put points on the board. So that's my best one as we sit here today, and that's the direction I'm headed.
I had to pick up Carson Wentz in fantasy because Dak Prescott was my starter, and obviously he's injured. So I would like Dak Prescott to make way for Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz throws like 4 touchdowns in that game, and then me and John both win. Whirling Dermish
I
gets
thought
a
you
win.
were going to start talking about the Cowboys, but thanks for staying
No,
away
I'm not.
from
I'm not going to start talking about the Cowboys because they, right now it's not their division to win, John.
Except you did. Except you did start talking about the Cowboys. Right?
This is the Philadelphia Eagles division to win right now. That's what it is.
I get it.
That's what it is.
Keep going. I thought for sure, you know I'm in Dallas. I thought you were going to start sticking it to me, but I'm sure we'll get there shortly.
No, we believe in Cooper Rush.
Yeah, there you go. In Cooper Rush, we trust. In the unders, we trust, really. 11-5
exactly.
in week 1. So you have a lot to choose from here in week 2. What's your top under pick for week 2?
50% chance of rain, winds 12 to 15 miles an hour. Does that sound familiar? I'm going to look at San Francisco and Seattle in this situation. 50% chance of rain, 15-mile-an-hour winds, cloudy. I look at Seattle in this situation with Geno Smith. Not sure. Offensive line banged up. I'm not sure. They're young as well. I don't think in this situation that San Francisco is going to score a ton of points. When you put these two teams and match these two teams up, given the weather situation and given kind of the maturity of their offenses at this point early in the season, I like this pick. That's the direction I'm going to head.
All right, cool. Let's take a look at John Berger's top NFL picks for week 2. He likes the Colts against the spread against the Jags. Saints on the money line. Washington and Detroit to go over the 48.5, and the Seahawks and Niners to go under the 40. All right, we got one last piece of work for you, John. What's the parlay for week 2? Make us some money here, big time.
Yeah, I'm looking at this one. I'm going to take the under in Cincy. I'm going to roll up with the under in Denver, the under in the Arizona game, and then I'm going to take the over in the Detroit-Washington game. That's one I think can make some sense. And Hakeem loves these flyers. He loves this portion of the show. But as NFL bets goes, I kind of feel good about this one. I think it's all going to hinge on what happens in that Detroit-Washington game and in Cincinnati and Dallas. If Dallas shows up with a little bit of edge to them, I think could go on the other. But I it's playing Cincinnati. I think their defense can step up. I just think that those are the two games that whole thing hinges on. But I like the bet.
All right, John Berger, thank you so much for your picks. We'll see if your parlay can win us some cash. It's a 14 play. Got the under with the Bengals and Cowboys, Texans and Broncos, Cardinals and Raiders, and the over between the Commanders and Lions. If you bet $25 on that and they hit, you're winning $307.08. That is pretty darn good for week 2.
See performers from week 1 in the NFL. Hope you had one of these guys in your starting lineup. Justin Jefferson, my goodness. 9 catches on 11 targets, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns, 39 fantasy points, PPR scoring. Time now for the Week 2 edition of Stardom Situm. 2-time Fantasy Analyst of the Year, Jamie Eisenberg, here to help you dominate your league.
Week 2 should be fun for fantasy managers and much better for Matthew Stafford. He's our start of the week for week number 2, taking on the Falcons defense that really struggled against Jameis Winston last week, especially in the fourth quarter. Winston over 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in that final period to help the Saints get the win. And I think the same thing happens for Matthew Stafford, but over the course of 4 quarters. Maybe he gets 2 touchdowns a quarter. That would be fantastic. He was awful against Buffalo with 3 interceptions, but this is almost a layup of a spot for him to bounce back against the Falcons team coming across the country and the Rams with extra rest having played on Thursday night. The sit quarterback for week number 2 is going to be Tom Brady. I know that sounds hard to say, but offensive lines are concerned. No Donovan Smith, no Chris Godwin. Very good Saints defense on the other side. Brady doesn't have a great track record against the Saints defense. I think he's going to make him struggle a little bit. So Brady, not a must-start guy. I would consider guys like Trey Lance and Carson Wentz over Tom Brady this week. I know that sounds crazy, but Brady could struggle. Let's go now to the running backs, and the start running back for this week is Antonio Gibson, who will basically be a must-start guy until Brian Robinson returns. But this is such a great spot against the Detroit defense that's really going to struggle against the run. Gibson's going to be so involved in the passing game like we saw last week. I love this setup for him. He's got top 10 potential taking on the Lions. The sit running back for this week is Ezekiel Elliott, and it's probably going to be a sit for him for a long time. As soon as Dak Prescott comes back, maybe things change. But Prescott being out, the offensive line still being a concern, and this Bengals run defense did a great job against the Steelers run game last week, even before Najee Harris left the game. I think as we saw from Zeke, he's going to share time with Tony Pollard, but really it's just about the stuff going on around him. Quarterback play, offensive line play, tough to trust Ezekiel Elliott right now. Let's stick with the theme of trusting the Rams. We'll go back to to Allen Robinson in this matchup against the Falcons. Robinson was terrible last week, only 2 targets, only 1 catch. But you know what happened? Sean McVay gave him that squeaky wheel treatment. He's going to get more targets, more opportunities. Again, much easier opponent. Buffalo's defense is tough, Stafford, Robinson will get on the same page. You will like Allen Robinson this week and hopefully for the rest of the season. The sit wide receiver is going to be DK Metcalf. It was great to see him get 7 targets in that game against Denver. It was great to see him catch all 7 targets, but they only had 36 receiving yards. I think that's the problem. Geno Smith is not going to help DK Metcalf. This is a very good 49ers defense. Metcalf not the best track record against San Francisco. I would only consider DK Metcalf as a number 3 receiver in 3 receiver leagues. The start tight end for this week, let's stick with that Rams theme. We'll go back to Tyler Higbee. 11 targets in that game against Buffalo, and this is kind of a hedge against Allen Robinson. You know Cooper Kupp's going to get his, but if Robinson struggles or doesn't get open, then I think this is where you'll see Matthew Stafford going to Tyler Higbee, and I think what we'll get from him is positive production. So I do like the fact that Higbee had so many targets in week 1. I think that's something that you can see moving forward, and I do think he will be a top 12 tight end in this matchup against the Falcons. The sit tight end is basically to sit the entire team. I'm staying away from the Chicago Bears. I think the Packers defense bounces back in a big way. Kmet will get more targets than he had last week because he had none, but he will not get the production that you're looking for. Off to a slow start for Cole Kmet. Hopefully he bounces back as the season moves on, but in week 2, he's somebody you want to sit.